Now, I want to tell you a story. Not the kind you find in fancy books with gold lettering on the spine, but the kind your grandmother might have told you on a summer evening, sitting on the porch while the fireflies came out. This is a story about starting over, about finding family in the last place you expected, about two broken people and two hurting boys who somehow, by the grace of something bigger than themselves, learned to become whole again. I wrote this for those of you who remember when a person's word meant something, when neighbors looked after neighbors without being asked, when love wasn't about grand gestures, but about showing up day after day, even when it was hard. This story takes place in 1882 in a little town called Ridgewater. If you've ever had to begin again or wished you could, this one's for you. The stagecoach left her standing in a cloud of yellow dust. Anna Reed watched it rattle away down the rutted road, one hand shielding her eyes against the afternoon sun. The driver hadn't bothered with a farewell. Neither had the other passengers. She was just another widow heading west with nothing but a carpet bag and whatever pride she could still carry. The dust settled on her dress, that old calico. The blue one faded from too many washings. She'd mended the shoulders twice already, but you couldn't hardly tell unless you looked real close. She brushed it off without thinking. Some habits died hard. Ridgewater wasn't much to look at. A main street wide enough for two wagons to pass. A general store with a sagging porch. A church steeple rising white against the hills. Somewhere down the way, a dog barked once and fell silent. She picked up her bag and started walking. The boardwalk creaked something fierce under her boots. One sole had come loose 3 days back, and she'd been tucking it in ever since. Nobody needed to know about that. Nobody was looking anyway. The general store smelled of coffee beans and leather and something sweet molasses, maybe, or dried apples in a barrel by the door. A woman stood behind the counter, gray hair pulled back tight, spectacles sitting on a nose that had seen better days. "Afternoon?" Anna said. The woman looked up. Her eyes traveled from Anna's dusty hem to her worn collar and back again. That look took about 3 seconds, but Anna felt every one of them. "Help you. I'm looking for work, cooking, cleaning, mending. I can do most anything that needs doing." "That's so?" "Yes, ma'am." The woman's mouth pressed into a thin line, the way a door closes when company's not welcome. "We don't need anybody. Try the hotel down the way, maybe, or ask at the livery." "Thank you, kindly." Anna turned to leave. Her hand was on the door when the woman spoke again. "You got family here. Anybody who can vouch for you?" "No, ma'am, just myself." The silence that followed said everything the woman didn't. The hotel clerk shook his head before Anna even finished asking. "The livery owner's wife said they couldn't afford help. Not with the drought and all." The blacksmith's daughter just stared like Anna had spoken Chinese. By the time the shadows started stretching long across the street, Anna had walked the length of Ridgewater twice and collected nothing but dust on her shoes and a heaviness in her chest she refused to name. She sat herself down on a bench outside the livery stable. The wood was rough and warm from the sun, the kind of warm that seeps into your bones when you're tired enough to let it. Somewhere inside, a horse stamped and snorted. The smell of hay drifted through the open doors, sweet and familiar. She counted the coins in her pocket without taking them out. 12 cents. Enough for a loaf of bread. Maybe she'd seen the sign in the bakery window. 5 cents for a small loaf. Not enough for a room. The cheapest boarding house wanted 25 cents a night, paid in advance. The sun dropped lower. The sky turned gold, then pink, then that deep purple color of a bruise just starting to heal. She was still sitting there when the wagon came down the street. It was a working wagon, scarred wood, iron-rimmed wheels, 2 horses that had seen hard use and plenty of it. A man held the reins, broad-shouldered, hat pulled low against the fading light. Beside him sat two boys. The older one, maybe 12, had red hair and a jaw set like he was angry at the whole world. The younger one, 8 or so, kept fidgeting with something in his hands, a piece of string. Looked like wound around and around his fingers. The wagon slowed as it passed. Anna didn't look up. She'd learned that lesson years ago. Looking up invited questions. Questions invited pity. And pity she could do without. But she felt the eyes on her anyway. The man's eyes. Steady and dark beneath the brim of his hat. Watching her the way you'd watch a horse that might be lame. Assessing. Calculating. Trying to figure out what kind of trouble she might be. The wagon kept moving. She let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. The livery doors were still open. Inside, the owner was forking hay into a stall, his back to the street, whistling something tuneless. The loft above looked warm and dry, full of last season's hay, golden and sweet-smelling in the dim light. Anna stood up. She walked around the side of the building, where the shadows ran deeper and the street noise faded to almost nothing. There was a ladder leaning against the wall, old but sturdy enough. The rungs were rough under her fingers, the wood worn smooth in the middle where countless hands had climbed before her. She went up without making a sound. The hay was soft as a feather bed. The rafters creaked when the wind pushed against them. A gentle sound, almost like breathing, almost like, through a gap in the boards, she could see the first stars coming out, sharp and white against the darkening sky. The evening star hung low on the horizon, bright as a promise. She curled her body small and closed her eyes. Tomorrow she would try again. Tomorrow she would find something. She always had before. That was the thing about losing everything it taught you how to start over, whether you wanted to learn that lesson or not. Sleep came slow and shallow, full of old dreams and older fears. Somewhere deep in the night, she heard a child crying, or maybe she dreamed it. The sound faded before she could be sure, swallowed up by the wind, and the creaking of the old barn, and the vast silence of the prairie. Oh, morning came with the smell of coffee and the sound of voices below. Anna woke with hay in her hair and a crick in her neck that would take half the day to work out. Gray light filtered through the gaps in the boards, pale and thin as skimmed milk. The voices grew louder, a man's, rough with irritation, and another man's, deeper, calmer. The kind of voice that was used to getting its way without raising itself. I don't care who she is. She can't just sleep in my barn like some, how much, what, one night's lodging, what's the rate? A pause. Anna held her breath, her heart beating so loud she was sure they could hear it downstairs. This ain't a hotel, Cole. Everything's got a price. Hendricks, name yours. Another pause, longer this time. 2 bits, the clink of coins, the creak of floorboards. She's paid up. Now leave her be. Footsteps on the ladder. Anna sat up quick, brushing hay from her dress, her heart hammering against her ribs like it wanted out. The man's head appeared at the top of the ladder. The same man from the wagon. Without his hat, she could see his face clear now, weathered, maybe 35, with lines around his eyes that spoke of squinting into too many suns and not enough sleep. His hair was dark, shot through with gray at the temples, the kind of gray that comes early to men who carry heavy loads. He didn't smile. Ma'am? Sir? You got a name? Anna Reed? He nodded once, like the name meant nothing and everything at the same time. like he was filing it away somewhere for later. Matthew Cole? I got a ranch about 4 miles out, past the creek and up the ridge. 2 boys, 12 and 8. Their mother passed on 2 years back. He paused, and something moved behind his eyes. Pain. Maybe. Or just the memory of it. The house is a mess. The boys are worse. I need help. Anna's throat went tight. What kind of help? The kind that stays? She didn't answer right away. The hay dust drifted between them, golden in the gray morning light, dancing slow like it had all the time in the world. I'm not looking for charity, Mr. Cole. Good. I'm not offering any. His eyes met hers, dark, unreadable, tired in a way that went deeper than lack of sleep, the kind of tired that settles into a man's bones and doesn't leave. I'm offering a roof over your head, 3 meals a day, a wage. When I can spare it, in exchange, you keep the house, cook the meals, make sure the boys don't burn the place down or kill each other trying. And that's all. That's all. She studied his face, the set of his jaw, stubborn as a mule, the way his hands gripped the ladder rungs, calloused, capable, holding on like a man who'd learned not to let go of anything that mattered. Your boys, she said carefully, they know about this arrangement. They will. They might not take kindly to a stranger in their home. They don't take kindly to much of anything these days. A muscle worked in his cheek, jumping like a nerve. That's part of the problem. The silence stretched between them, thick as molasses. Outside, a rooster crowed somewhere. The town was waking up, coming alive with all the ordinary sounds of an ordinary day. All right, Anna said. Matthew Cole blinked, just once, like she'd surprised him. All right. I said all right. I'll come with you. But I've got conditions. His eyebrows lifted just a hair. Go on then. I work hard. I don't complain. But I'm not a servant. And I won't be treated like one. I eat at the table, same as everyone else. I get 1 day off each week, Sundays preferably. And if your boys give me trouble, I handle it my way. We got a deal. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Something shifted in his eyes, surprise, maybe, or something closer to respect, like he'd expected her to fold and she hadn't. Fair enough, he said. He climbed back down the ladder. Anna gathered up her carpet bag, straightened her dress best she could, and followed after him. The wagon was waiting outside, the horses standing patient in the early light, their breath making little clouds in the cool air. The 2 boys sat in the back, legs dangling over the edge. The older one red-haired, sharp-eyed. His face a closed door watched her climb up to the bench beside their father. His expression didn't give away a thing, but his eyes said plenty. The younger one just stared, hands still fidgeting with that piece of string, winding it around and around his fingers like a worry he couldn't put down. Matthew Cole clicked his tongue at the horses. The wagon lurched forward and started rolling. Nobody spoke. The road unwound ahead of them, dusty and straight, cutting through grassland that rolled toward the hills like a golden sea. The morning sun climbed higher, burning off the chill, warming Anna's face and shoulders. She kept her eyes forward, her back straight as a fence post, her hands folded in her lap. Behind her, the older boy leaned close to his brother. She won't last, he whispered. Quiet, but not quiet enough. None of them ever do. Anna heard every word. She didn't turn around, pinch, But somewhere deep inside her chest, something that had been sleeping for a long time woke up and took notice. If this story brings back memories of your own new beginnings, a fresh start, a new town, or folks who became family when you needed them most, we'd be honored to hear where you're listening from today. As the old saying goes, strangers are just friends we haven't met yet. The wagon wheels groaned over every rut in the road, and Lord knows there were plenty of them. Anna gripped the edge of the bench, her knuckles going white against the weathered wood. Matthew Cole sat beside her, close enough that she could smell the dust on his clothes and something else underneath pine tar. Maybe. Or saddle leather worn soft from years of use. He held the reins loose and easy, the way a man does when his hands know the work better than his head. Neither of them had said a word since leaving town. The silence stretched on, thin as fence wire. Behind them, the two boys whispered to each other, their voices too low to make out. Anna felt their eyes on her back, sharp as little stones pressing through her dress. "The house needs work," Matthew said finally. Anna turned her head just enough to see his profile against the morning sky. His jaw was set hard, like he was chewing on something that wouldn't go down easy. "Most houses do," she said. "I mean, it's bad." "Sarah." He stopped cold. His hands tightened on the reins, the leather creaking in his grip. "My wife, she kept things running proper. After she passed, I tried my best. But the boys?" He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Anna watched the muscles work in his throat, swallowing something down. Grief. Maybe. Or pride. Hard to tell which. And maybe it didn't matter none. "What happened to the others?" she asked. "Others. Your boy said I wouldn't last. Said none of them ever do." Matthew's jaw went tighter still. A vein stood out on his temple, pulsing with his heartbeat. 3 women since Sarah. First one stayed a month. Second one made it 2 weeks. Third one didn't get through supper. "Why's that?" The wagon hit a deep rut, and Anna braced herself against the jolt. Her teeth clicked together hard enough to taste copper. "Eli," Matthew said. Quiet now. "He's difficult. Blames me for his mother dying. Blames everyone, I reckon. Samuel's easier, but he follows where his brother leads." The road curved lazy around a stand of cottonwoods, their leaves rustling silver in the breeze. Through the branches, Anna caught a glimpse of water, a creek, shallow and clear, winding through the tall grass like a ribbon of light. "I'm not asking for love," Matthew said. The words came out rough, like he was pulling them up from somewhere deep in his chest. "I'm not offering it neither. I just need someone who won't run off." Anna looked at him then, really looked. The gray threading through his temples, the lines carved deep around his mouth, the way his shoulders curved forward, carrying weight that had nothing to do with what his hands were holding. "Why me?" she asked. "You don't know the first thing about me." Matthew turned his head. His eyes met hers, dark, tired, but steady as stone. "I know what it looks like when someone's holding themselves together with nothing but stubborn," he said. "Reckon that's enough for now." The wagon crested the last hill. Below them, the ranch spread out across the valley, a white house with paint peeling off the boards, a barn that needed new shingles, something awful. 3 horses watching from the corral with their ears pricked forward. And there on the porch, small against all that faded white paint, stood a boy with red hair and his arms crossed tight over his chest, waiting. The front door swung open with a creak that echoed clean through the empty hallway. Anna stepped inside, and the smell hit her first stale grease. Old smoke. Something sour underneath like milk left too long in the sun. Dust covered every surface thick as winter frost. Dishes crusted with dried food rose in wobbly stacks beside the basin. A man's shirt hung over the back of a chair, one sleeve dragging on the floor. She set her carpet bag down by the door. Behind her, Matthew's boots stopped at the threshold. He stood there like a man afraid to enter his own house. "I'll be out in the barn," he said. "Supper's at 6." The door closed. His footsteps faded across the porch. Down the steps. Gone. Anna stood alone in the silence. The kitchen stretched out before her cast-iron stove gone black with grease and neglect. Table scarred with knife marks and water rings. A window so thick with grime the light coming through looked yellow and sick. On a shelf near that dirty window sat a woman's shawl, folded neat and careful. It was the only clean thing in the whole room, the only thing someone had bothered to tend. Anna crossed to it slow. The wool was soft under her fingers, still holding a faint smell of lavender and something else rose water, maybe, or just the memory of the woman who'd worn it. She didn't pick it up, just touched it once, gentle, then pulled her hand back. A floorboard creaked behind her. She turned around. The older boy, Eli, stood in the doorway to the back hall. His arms were crossed tight over his chest, chin lifted, eyes flat and cold as river stones in winter. "You're in my mother's kitchen," he said. Anna met his gaze and held it. "I know. She won't like you being here." "She's not here anymore. Son?" Something moved across the boy's face, quick as lightning. There and gone before Anna could put a name to it. "Neither will you be," he said. "Soon enough?" "Soon." He turned on his heel and disappeared down the hall. His footsteps pounded up the stairs, heavy and angry. And then a door slammed hard enough to shake dust loose from the ceiling and send it drifting down like dirty snow. Anna let out a long breath. She looked around the kitchen one more time, taking stock. The stove needed blacking, but first it needed scrubbing down to bare iron. The table needed clearing. The floor needed sweeping. The window needed washing. Everything needed something. She rolled up her sleeves. Under the sink she found a brush with half its bristles missing and a cake of lye soap gone soft and gray with age. The pump handle squeaked loud when she worked it, protesting like it hadn't been used proper in months, but water came rust brown at first, then running clear and cold. She filled a basin and got to work. The grease came off the stove in long black curls, stubborn and thick. Her hands turned red, then raw. The lye soap stung where her skin had cracked from the dry air, burning like fire. But she kept on scrubbing. The work felt good. The work felt necessary. The work kept her hands busy and her mind from wandering to places she didn't want it to go. The light through the window shifted from yellow to gold to the deep orange of late afternoon. A small sound made her look up. The younger boy Samuel stood in the kitchen doorway now. He was smaller than his brother, slight as a sapling, with hair the color of ripe wheat and eyes that seemed too big for his thin face. He held that piece of string in his hands, winding it around and around his fingers without seeming to know he was doing it. He didn't say a word. Anna wiped her hands on her apron, leaving streaks of gray. "You must be Samuel." A tiny nod. Quick like a bird. "I'm Anna." Nothing. The string wound tighter around his fingers, cutting into the skin. "Are you hungry?" The boy's eyes darted to the stove, then back to her face. Another small nod. "I'll make something directly. You can watch if you want." He didn't move, but he didn't run off neither. Anna turned back to her work. She found flour in a tin with a rusted lid, lard in a crock that had seen better days, salt in a box with a faded picture of a girl holding an umbrella. The sourdough crock on the shelf held starter that was still alive, sour and bubbling when she lifted the cloth. A small miracle in this house of neglect. She mixed the dough in silence, her hands moving through motions older than memory. Mix, knead, shape. The dough came together under her palms, smooth and yielding, warm as living flesh. Behind her, she heard Samuel take a step closer. Then another. She didn't turn around, just kept working, steady and calm. The bread went into the oven. Heat pressed against her face, her arms, her chest, fierce and good chest. Sweat prickled at her hairline and trickled down her temple. "My mama used to make bread." The words came so soft, Anna almost missed them. Near whispered, like the boy was afraid of his own voice. Her hands went still on the oven door. Did she now? On Saturdays mostly? The whole house smelled like it? Eli says I shouldn't remember. But I do. Anna turned around slow and careful, the way you'd move around a spooked animal. Samuel stood just 3 feet away now. His eyes were wet, shining in the lamplight, but no tears fell. The string hung forgotten from his fingers, loose and tangled. "That's a good memory to keep," Anna said. Quiet. The boy's lower lip trembled once. Then he pressed his mouth into a hard line, a gesture that looked borrowed from someone older, someone who'd taught him that crying was weakness. "I'm not supposed to talk about her," he said. "Who told you that?" But Samuel was already backing away. He bumped into the doorframe, turned quick, and ran. His footsteps echoed up the stairs, lighter than his brother's, but moving just as fast. Another door slammed shut. Anna stood alone in the kitchen, the smell of baking bread filling the empty space, mixing with the dust and the old grief that hung in every corner of this house. She looked at the shawl on the shelf. The lavender scent seemed stronger now, or maybe she was just paying more attention. The floorboards above her head creaked, one set of footsteps pacing back and forth, restless as a caged thing. The other stayed still. She had until supper to figure out how to feed a family that had forgotten what it meant to sit down together. The bread rose golden in the oven's heat, the crust going brown and crackled outside. The afternoon shadows stretched long and thin across the yard, somewhere in the barn. Matthew Cole was probably telling himself he'd made a smart choice bringing her here. Anna touched the wedding ring on her finger, the thin gold band she'd worn for 7 years of a marriage that had brought her nothing but heartache and debt. She didn't take it off. Not yet. But for the first time since the stagecoach left her standing in that cloud of yellow dust, she wondered if she might. Then she heard it soft, muffled, coming from somewhere upstairs through the gaps in the old floorboards. Crying? One of the boys was crying up there, and the other one was pretending hard not to hear. The days folded into each other like pages in a well-worn Bible. Anna woke before dawn each morning, when the sky outside her small window was still the color of a bruise just starting to fade. She dressed in the dark, fingers finding buttons by memory, feet finding the cold floorboards without making a sound. The kitchen waited for her, like an old friend learning to trust again. She coaxed the stove to life with kindling and patience, blowing gentle on the embers until they caught and held. The cast iron warmed under her hands, the firebox glowing orange through its seams. Coffee went on first grounds she'd found in a tin behind the flour, dark and rich, strong enough to put hair on your chest. as her daddy used to say. By the time the sun cleared the ridge, the house smelled different. Bread, coffee, the clean, sharp scent of lye soap on scrubbed wood. Matthew noticed. Anna could tell by the way he paused in the doorway each morning, nostrils flaring just slightly, eyes moving across the kitchen like a man taking inventory of something he'd thought was lost forever. He never said a word about it. Neither did she. The boys ate her food and kept their eyes on their plates. Eli sat with his shoulders hunched up around his ears, shoveling biscuits into his mouth like they might disappear if he didn't get to them quick enough. Samuel picked at his food, stealing glances at Anna when he thought she wasn't paying attention. She was always paying attention. On the fourth day, the routine broke clean in half. Anna was hanging wash on the line behind the house sheets and shirts and the boys' trousers, all of them stiff with soap and smelling of clean water and honest work. The wind caught the fabric and snapped it against her hands, cold and sharp as a slap. A sound made her turn quick. Samuel was running across the yard, chasing one of the barn cats, a gray tabby with a torn ear and a mean disposition that had scratched Anna twice already. The boy's legs pumped hard, arms wheeling wild for balance. His face split wide with the first real smile she'd seen since coming to this place. Then his boot caught a root. He went down hard. The sound of his body hitting the packed dirt reached Anna a half second before his scream high, thin, more shock than pain, but enough to turn her blood to ice water. She dropped the shirt in her hands and ran. Samuel lay curled on his side, both hands wrapped tight around his knee. Blood seeped dark and wet between his fingers, bright against his pale skin. His face had gone white as new milk, breath coming in short little gasps that shook his whole body. Anna dropped to her knees in the dirt beside him. "Let me see now." The boy shook his head, hands pressing tighter. "Samuel, let me see." Something in her voice made him look up. His eyes were huge, swimming with tears that hadn't spilled over yet. His lower lip quivered like a leaf in a storm, slow and careful. He lifted his hands away. The knee was a mess, skin scraped clean away in a raw patch the size of a silver dollar. Dirt and small stones pressed deep into the wound. Blood welled up fresh, trickling down his shin in thin red lines that soaked into his sock. Anna's stomach clenched hard, but she kept her face smooth and calm. "Looks worse than it is," she said. "Can you stand up for me?" A tiny nod. She helped him to his feet, one arm wrapped around his waist, taking his weight against her hip. He was lighter than she expected, all sharp bones and angles, his body stiff with the effort of holding back tears. They made it to the porch. She settled him down gentle on the top step and went inside for water. Clean rags. The cake of soap she'd been saving for something important. When she came back out, Eli was standing at the corner of the house, watching. His arms were crossed, face blank as a slate wiped clean, but his eyes tracked every move Anna made as she knelt down in front of his little brother. She dipped a rag in the water. It came away cold and dripping against her fingers. "This is gonna sting some," she said. Samuel's hands gripped the edge of the step so tight his knuckles went white as bone. Anna cleaned the wound, gentle but thorough, the way her own mama had taught her years ago. The water in the basin turned pink, then the color of rust. Small stones clinked against the tin as she picked them careful from the torn skin. Samuel's breath hissed sharp between his teeth, but he didn't pull away, didn't cry out. She found herself humming without meaning to. An old hymn, something her mama used to sing while kneading bread on Saturday mornings. The melody came out rough and low, more feeling than music. Samuel's grip on the step eased up some. His breathing slowed down. Anna wrapped the knee with a strip of clean cotton, tying it firm but not too tight. Her hands knew the work she'd done this plenty of times before for other wounds, in another life that seemed 100 years gone now. "There," she said. "Good as new in a week's time." Samuel looked down at the bandage. His finger traced the white fabric, touching the knot she'd tied. "Mama used to hum that song," he said, quiet as a secret. Anna's hands went still. "When I got hurt, she'd hum it. And it didn't hurt so bad after." The words hung in the air between them, fragile as spider silk, precious as gold. Anna didn't know what to say, so she said nothing. Just rested her hand on the boy's shoulder, light and quick, there and gone like a bird landing. Samuel didn't pull away. Movement at the corner of her eye made Anna turn her head. Eli still stood at the edge of the house, but something had shifted in his face. The blankness had cracked, just the smallest bit. Underneath it, she caught a glimpse of something raw and tangled, anger mixed up with confusion, mixed up with the start of something he didn't have words for yet. He met her eyes for one long moment. Then he turned and walked toward the barn. Shoulders stiff, stride too fast, hands shoved deep in his pockets like he was trying to hold something in. Anna watched him go. The basin of bloody water sat cooling at her feet. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of hay and horses and something else underneath rain coming. Maybe, still miles off but moving closer. Samuel's hand found the edge of her sleeve. "Eli's not mean," he whispered, so soft she had to lean in close to hear. "He's just scared is all." "Scared of what?" The boy's fingers tightened on the fabric. "That you'll leave too, like the others done, like Mama." The words landed somewhere deep in Anna's chest. She looked toward the barn, where Eli had disappeared into the shadows inside, then back at Samuel, whose eyes held more knowing than any 8-year-old had a right to carry. "I'm not leaving," she said. Samuel studied her face, searching hard, looking for the lie, looking for the crack where the promise might break. Whatever he found made him nod once, small and solemn, and let go of her sleeve. The screen door creaked open behind them. Matthew stood in the doorway, hat in his hands, eyes moving from Samuel's bandaged knee to Anna's face and back again. "What happened here?" "He took a fall," Anna said. "It's cleaned and wrapped up proper. He'll be right as rain." Matthew's gaze stayed on the bandage, on his son's face, on the empty basin with its pink-tinged water. "I'm obliged to you," he said. The words came out rough and rusty, like a man speaking a language he'd near forgotten how to use. Anna stood up, brushing dirt from her knees. "Supper's in an hour," she said. "If you want to wash up first." She walked past him into the house, close enough to catch his scent, sweat, and leather, and something underneath that might have been surprise, or might have been something else entirely. The door closed behind her. She leaned against the kitchen counter, hands gripping the edge, heart knocking harder than it ought to. Through the window, she watched Matthew still standing on the porch. He was looking down at Samuel now, his hand reaching out slow to touch the boy's hair, gentle and hesitant, like a man remembering how to be tender. Eli came out of the barn carrying a bucket. He crossed the yard without looking at his father or his brother. But as he passed by the porch steps, his free hand brushed Samuel's shoulder. Quick, almost too fast to see. Then he was gone around the corner of the house. Anna's breath caught in her throat. That small touch, so brief it might have been imagined, said more than 100 words could ever say. There was a shirt drying on the line that she'd found wadded up under Matthew's bed yesterday. The sleeve had torn loose at the seam, stitches pulled apart from too much wear and not enough care. She'd mended it that morning without thinking, her needle moving through the fabric in the gray light before dawn. She hadn't told him about it. Tonight. She'd fold it up neat and leave it on his chair. He'd find it after supper. When the boys were upstairs and the kitchen had gone quiet, he'd run his thumb over those stitches. She was certain of it. She didn't know what he'd think, what he'd feel, but she knew something had shifted today. Something small but real, like a seed pushing up through hard ground. The kettle on the stove began to whistle, steam rising white and warm against her face. Anna lifted it off the heat. Outside. The first drops of rain started to fall, pattering soft against the windows, like fingers asking to be let in. And somewhere in that barn, a boy with red hair was standing alone in the shadows, fighting a war he didn't know how to win. The book was falling apart in her hands. Anna found it wedged behind the wood box. Spine cracked clean through, pages soft and yellow with age. McGuffey's Eclectic Primer. The cover said, though half the letters had worn away to nothing. Inside the front cover, a child's name was written, in careful, shaky script, Sarah Cole, 1859. She held it for a long moment, feeling the weight of it, the history. Then she carried it to the kitchen table and set it down beside the lamp. Samuel appeared in the doorway that evening, drawn by the smell of apple pie cooling on the windowsill. His eyes found the book straight away, quick as a bird spotting seed. "What's that you got there? A reader? I reckoned you might like to practice your letters some." The boy's face closed up like a door swinging shut. "I don't need to read." "Everybody needs to read, child." "Pa don't make me." "I'm not your pa." Samuel's jaw set tight. He looked so much like his brother in that moment, same stubborn set, same way of hunching his shoulders up around his ears, that Anna had to look away or smile. And smiling didn't seem right just then. She pulled out the chair beside her. "Sit yourself down, just for a few minutes, if you hate it. We'll stop." The boy didn't budge. Anna opened the book to the first page. The letters were large and simple, printed beside woodcuts of cats and dogs and children playing in a yard. She traced her finger under the first word, slow and steady. Can you say that for me?" Silence thick as mud. She kept her finger on the page and waited. The lamp flame flickered and steadied. A moth bumped soft against the window glass, trying to get at the light. The floorboards creaked. Samuel slid into the chair beside her, body stiff as a poker, hands flat on the table like he might bolt any second. Anna said again, patient. Samuel whispered back. His voice was barely there, thin as smoke. "Good boy. Now this one here. Cat, cat." They worked through the first page together, word by careful word, then the second. Samuel's voice grew steadier, his shoulders dropping down bit by bit as the letters started making sense to him. Anna didn't praise him none, didn't push, just pointed and waited and let him find his own way through. They were halfway down the third page when a shadow fell across the doorway. Eli stood there watching, arms crossed over his chest, face arranged in careful scorn. "What are you doing?" Samuel's head snapped up quick, color flooded his cheeks. red as summer apples. Nothing. Don't look like nothing to me. Eli's eyes moved from the book to Anna to his brother and back again. You're reading baby stuff. It ain't baby stuff. Ma taught herself to read when she was 6 years old. You're 8 and you still can't even... Eli. Anna's voice cut through clean and sharp. That's enough now. The older boy's mouth twisted sideways, but he didn't finish what he was fixing to say. He crossed to the corner near the stove and dropped himself down on a stool. Back against the wall, legs stretched out in front of him. The way he sat said he didn't care one bit, but the angle of his head said he was listening to every word. Anna turned back to Samuel. Let's try this next one. They kept on. The lamp flame flickered and steadied and flickered again. Outside, the last of the daylight faded from the sky, turning the windows to mirrors that showed the three of them, woman, boy, and the shadow of another boy pretending not to pay attention. Samuel stumbled hard over a word. Tried again. Got it wrong a second time. His hands curled into fists on the table, knuckles going white. I can't do it, he said. It's too hard. It ain't too hard. You're just tired is all. We can stop for tonight. No. The word came out fierce, surprising them both. I want to finish the page. Anna studied his face, the set of his jaw, determined despite everything. All right then. Sound it out for me. First letter. Samuel bent over the book again. His finger traced under the word, lips moving silent. M, he said. Ma. That's right. Oh. Keep on. His forehead wrinkled up. Moth. Mother. The word hung in the air between them. Samuel went still as stone. His finger stopped moving. His breath caught hard in his throat. Mother, he said again, softer now, like he was tasting something he'd forgotten the flavor of. That's what it says, ain't it, Mother? Anna didn't speak. Couldn't have if she'd wanted to. The boy's eyes stayed fixed on the page, but she could see the change moving across his face, the way his features went soft, then crumpled, then hardened back up as he fought to hold something in. Mama used to read to me, he said. His voice cracked right down the middle. Before bed, every single night. She had this voice real soft and low, and she'd do different sounds for all the animals and make me laugh, and... He stopped cold, in the corner by the stove. Eli had gone rigid as a fence post. His hands gripped the edge of the stool, knuckles white as bleached bone. She used to sing too, Samuel went on, the words tumbling out now like water through a broken dam. When she was hanging the wash out to dry, this song about a river somewhere. I can't remember all the words no more, but I remember how it sounded. I remember how it made me feel. Anna's chest ached something fierce. That's a good memory to hold on to, she said. Quiet and careful. Samuel looked up at her then. His eyes were wet, shining in the lamplight, but the tears stayed put. Pa says we shouldn't talk about her. He says it just makes everything harder. Do you reckon that's true? The boy's lower lip shook. I don't know. Sometimes I get scared I'm going to forget what she looked like. And then I try real hard to remember, and it hurts even worse than forgetting. A sound came from the doorway behind them. Matthew stood frozen there, half in and half out, his face the color of cold ashes. He must have come in through the back, must have heard every word his boy had said. His eyes found Anna's across the room. She saw something give way in them, a wall coming down, a dam breaking loose. Then he looked at Samuel, at Eli, still rigid in his corner. Back at Samuel. "That's enough for tonight." His voice came out rough and scraped raw. "Time for bed now." Samuel's face crumpled. "But Pa," I said, "that's enough." The words came out harder than he meant them to. Anna saw him flinch at the sound of his own voice, saw his hands clench up at his sides. Samuel closed the book slow. He slid down off his chair and walked past his father without looking up. Footsteps heavy and dragging on the stairs. Eli followed a moment later, brushing past Matthew's shoulder without a single word between them. The kitchen fell silent as a church. Matthew stood in the doorway, chest rising and falling, eyes fixed on the primer still lying open on the table. "You shouldn't encourage them," he said finally. "Talking about her like that, it don't help nothing." Anna rose up from her chair. Her legs felt unsteady underneath her. "They need to remember her, Mr. Cole. Forgetting won't make the hurting stop." "You don't know that for certain." "Yes, sir. I surely do." Their eyes met across the room and held fast. The lamp flame guttered between them, throwing shadows that jumped and swayed on the walls. Matthew's jaw worked hard. She could see the words building up behind his teeth, arguments, denials. All the things he'd been telling himself for 2 long years, just to keep from falling apart. "My wife..." He stopped. His voice broke clean in two on the word. "My wife was everything I had. When she died, I reckoned if we just didn't talk about it, if we just kept our heads down and kept moving forward, the boys would be all right somehow, that I would be all right." "And are you?" The question landed between them heavy as a stone dropped in still water. Matthew's face twisted up. For one terrible moment, Anna thought he might holler at her, might order her out of his house, out of his life, away from all the wounds she kept touching whether she meant to or not. Instead, he turned around and walked out into the dark. The screen door banged shut behind him. Anna stood alone in the kitchen, the lamp burning low now, the smell of apple pie gone cold on the windowsill. She looked at the book still open on the table, at the word Samuel had sounded out letter by letter, not knowing what it was going to cost him. Mother. Such a small word to carry so much weight. She closed the book gentle and pressed her palm flat against the worn cover. Upstairs, she could hear the boys moving around bed springs creaking, footsteps crossing back and forth, voices murmuring too soft to make out the words. Outside, Matthew's shadow moved across the yard toward the barn. He walked like a man carrying something too heavy to ever set down. Anna turned the lamp down low. The darkness pressed in close around her. Thick and warm and full of questions she didn't have answers for. She had pushed too hard tonight. She knew that now. But she also knew something else. Something she'd caught sight of in Samuel's face when he spoke his mama's name out loud. Relief. That boy had been carrying those memories locked up tight inside his chest for 2 whole years, like a secret he was ashamed of keeping. And tonight, for just a moment, he'd let them out into the light. That had to count for something. Didn't it? The barn door creaked open somewhere in the dark. A lantern flickered to life inside, its glow spilling yellow through the gaps in the boards. Matthew wasn't coming back in. Not tonight. Anna climbed the stairs to her room, hand trailing light along the wall in the darkness. As she passed by the boy's door, she heard something that stopped her cold in her tracks. Crying. Not Samuel this time. Eli. The sound was muffled, pressed hard into a pillow or the crook of an arm, but there was no mistaking it. The raw, gasping sobs of a boy who'd been holding himself together for far too long. Anna's hand hung there in the air over the doorknob. She didn't knock. She couldn't. Not yet. The boy had too much pride built up. Too many walls standing tall. If she went in there now, he'd hate her for seeing him like this. But she stayed right where she was, listening quiet, until the sobs turned to ragged breaths and then to silence. Only then did she move on to her own room. She lay awake in the narrow bed, staring up at the ceiling, listening to the old house settle and creak around her in the dark. Somewhere out in the barn, a man was fighting a battle he didn't know how to win. Somewhere down the hall, two boys were learning that grief didn't follow any rules you set for it. And somewhere deep in her own chest, something she'd reckoned was dead and buried began to stir and stretch and open its eyes. The wedding ring on her finger caught a sliver of moonlight through the window. She touched it with her thumb. For the first time in 3 years, it felt like something she was choosing to wear, not something she was chained to. The church bell rang out across the valley, clear and sharp in the morning air. Anna stood before the small mirror in her room, pinning her hair into place with fingers that wouldn't quite hold steady. The face looking back at her was thinner than it had been a month ago, cheekbones standing out more, but there was color in her cheeks now. The sun had put it there, and the wind, and the hard, honest work. Her dress was the same faded calico she'd arrived in, but she'd washed it twice and mended the hem where it had started coming loose. It wasn't much to look at. It would have to do. Downstairs, she could hear Matthew moving through the kitchen, his boots heavy on the floorboards. The boys' voices drifted up through the gaps in the planking, Samuel asking something, Eli answering in a grunt that could have meant anything or nothing at all. She took one last look in the mirror, then she went down to meet them. Matthew stood by the door, hat in his hands. He'd shaved this morning. The sight of it caught Anna off guard. She'd gotten used to the stubble shadowing his jaw these past weeks, the rough edges that matched the rough edges of this house. Without it, he looked younger somehow, more open, more like a man who still had some softness left in him. Their eyes met across the room. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready." The wagon ride into town took near an hour by Anna's reckoning. She sat beside Matthew on the bench, hands folded proper in her lap, spine straight as a fence post against the wooden backrest. The boys sat in the back, legs dangling over the edge. Kicking at the dust, the wheels churned up behind them. Nobody spoke a word the whole way. The church came into view as they crested the last hill, white-clappered, gleaming in the morning sun. Tall steeple pointing up toward heaven. A dozen wagons already lined up neat in the yard. Folks milled about on the steps and in the shade of the oak trees, women in their Sunday best, men in clean shirts with their boots polished up. Matthew pulled the wagon to a stop at the edge of the gathering. Anna climbed down before he could offer his hand. Her boots hit the packed dirt, sending up a small puff of dust that settled on her hem. She brushed it away without thinking. Samuel appeared at her elbow, quick as a shadow. His hand found hers, small fingers wrapping around her palm tight. She looked down at him. He didn't meet her eyes. But he didn't let go neither. They walked toward the church together, Matthew first, then Anna with Samuel. Eli trailing behind like a storm cloud that wanted to be somewhere else. The whispers started before they even reached the steps. Anna heard them like the buzz of locusts in a cornfield, low and steady, words half hidden behind hands and fans and heads turned just so. That widow he brought home. Living under the same roof? I heard. Those poor boys, after everything they've been through. She kept her chin up level. Her grip on Samuel's hand stayed light and easy. The pastor's wife stood at the door, greeting folks as they filed in. She was a thin woman, sharp-featured, with a smile that looked like it had been pinned on her face and might blow away in a stiff wind. "Mr. Cole?" Her eyes slid past Matthew to Anna, lingered there like flies on honey, then moved on. "And, Mrs. Cole, is it—" "It is," Anna said. The woman's smile got tighter around the edges. "How lovely. We do so hope you'll be comfortable here among us." The words were polite enough. The tone underneath them was something else entirely. Anna dipped her head and walked on past her into the church. The pews were hard as judgment beneath her. The hymnal worn smooth from generations of hands holding it just like she was holding it now. She sat between the boy Samuel on her left, Eli on her right with Matthew anchoring the end of the row. The service commenced. Anna mouthed the words to the hymns, her mind wandering off elsewhere. She could feel the eyes on her curious, disapproving, calculating coming from every direction. The back of her neck prickled and burned with the weight of all that attention. Beside her, Samuel fidgeted with the corner of his hymnal, folding it back and forth. On her other side, Eli sat rigid as a wooden soldier, jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping beneath the skin. The pastor droned on about mercy and forgiveness, his voice rising and falling in practiced rhythms that washed over the congregation like water over river stones. Anna barely heard a single word of it. When the final hymn ended and folks began rising from their seats, she felt Samuel's hand slip back into hers. The gesture was quick, almost secretive, like he didn't want anybody else to see. She gave his fingers a gentle squeeze. They filed out into the yard with everyone else. The sun was riding high now. The morning chill burned off and gone. Little clusters of people gathered in the shade of the oak trees, talking low amongst themselves, shooting glances toward the Cole family with looks that ranged from curious to cold as creek water in January. Matthew headed for the wagon. Anna moved to follow after him. A voice stopped her short. "Mrs. Cole, might I have a word?" Two women stood near the church steps, watching her. One was the pastor's wife with her pinned-on smile. The other was older, heavier, with a face like bread dough left to rise too long and small raisin eyes pressed deep into the flesh. Anna turned to face them. "Yes, ma'am." The older woman smiled. It didn't help her looks any. "We were just remarking what a Christian thing Mr. Cole has done, taking you in the way he has. A woman in your circumstances." She let the word hang there like something foul. So very generous of him? The words landed one by one, each one precise and deliberate as a slap. "My circumstances," Anna repeated, keeping her voice even. "Well, yes, dear. A widow, all alone in the world, no family to speak of, no references." The woman's smile stretched wider, showing teeth. "It must be such a comfort, having a roof over your head, even if the arrangement is, well, unconventional." Behind her, Anna heard Samuel make a small, wounded sound, the whimper of a child hearing something he shouldn't have to hear. She looked at the woman square, at her smug, satisfied face, at the pastor's wife standing beside her, studying the clouds like they were the most interesting thing she'd ever seen. Mrs. Harmon. Margaret Harmon. Mrs. Harmon. Anna's voice came out steady and calm, cold as well water in the dead of winter. I do appreciate your concern for my welfare. Truly I do. But my arrangement with Mr. Cole is a legal marriage, properly witnessed and duly recorded at the courthouse. I am his wife, not his charity case. The woman's smile wobbled and slipped. I didn't mean to suggest. Yes, ma'am? You surely did. Anna took one step closer, close enough to smell the lavender water the woman had dabbed behind her ears. And I'll thank you kindly to keep your suggestions to yourself from here on out, especially when there's children present who don't need to hear such talk. She turned her back on both of them and walked toward the wagon without looking behind her. Samuel still had hold of her hand. His grip had gone tight during the exchange, small fingers digging hard into her palm. Now he looked up at her with something new shining in his eyes. Wonder. Maybe. Or the first green shoots of trust pushing up through hard ground. Eli waited by the wagon wheel, arms crossed over his chest, face blank as always. But as Anna came near, he spoke up. She ain't a charity case. Matthew, already up on the bench, looked down at his son sharp. What's that now? That woman? Mrs. Harmon? Eli's jaw worked hard. The things she said about, it don't matter what she said. It ain't true anyhow. Anna's not. She ain't what they're saying she is. The words came out rough and reluctant, like teeth being pulled one by one. But they came out all the same. Anna stared at him. Eli wouldn't look at her. He climbed up into the back of the wagon and sat down hard, eyes fixed on the horizon, shoulders hunched against something nobody else could see. Samuel scrambled up after his brother. Eli's right, he declared. You ain't charity. You make real good biscuits. A sound escaped from Matthew's throat. Half cough, half something else entirely. Anna climbed up onto the bench beside him. Her hands were trembling some. She folded them together in her lap where nobody would notice. Matthew clicked his tongue at the horses. The wagon lurched forward and started rolling. They were halfway home before he spoke. Eli's never stood up for anybody like that before, not since his mother passed. Anna kept her eyes on the road ahead. What you said back there, Matthew went on, his voice low and careful, to Mrs. Harmon, about being my wife. It's the truth. I know it is, but he stopped short. His hands tightened on the reins, knuckles going pale. You didn't have to say it like that, like you meant it down to your bones. Anna turned her head to look at him, at his profile sharp against the blue sky. Didn't I? The question hung there between them, unanswered. Matthew's jaw clenched tight. His eyes stayed fixed on the road, unwinding ahead. Behind them in the wagon bed, the boys had fallen asleep against each other, faces soft and young and unguarded in the afternoon light. Anna watched them for a long, quiet moment. Then she turned back to face the road. The ranch came into view as they topped the last rise. White house with its peeling paint, weathered barn with its sagging roof. 3 horses lifting their heads in the corral as the wagon rattled near. Home. The word surfaced in her mind before she could stop it. She tried to push it back down where it came from. It wouldn't go. Matthew pulled the wagon up beside the house and set the brake with a grunt. He climbed down from the bench, then turned around and held out his hand to Anna. She took it. His palm was rough and warm against her fingers, calloused from years of hard work, strong enough to lift her down like she weighed nothing at all. He let go the instant her feet touched ground. But something passed between them in that moment. a current, an understanding. A question neither one of them was ready to ask out loud just yet. The boys stirred in the wagon bed, waking up slow, rubbing sleep from their eyes. Anna turned toward the house. Something white on the porch railing caught her eye. An envelope? She climbed the steps and picked it up careful. The paper was thick and expensive, the kind that cost real money. Her name was written across the front in a hand she recognized. A hand that made her blood run cold. Her stomach dropped clear to her boots. "What is it?" Matthew asked from behind her. Anna didn't answer. She turned the envelope over slow. The seal was red wax, stamped with initials she had prayed she would never see again as long as she lived. Her dead husband's family had found her. The letter shook in Anna's hands. She stood on the porch, the envelope heavy between her fingers, that red wax seal glaring up at her like an accusation. The initials pressed into it were burned into her memory, HWR. Henry William Reed, her dead husband's father. The man who had taken everything from her and called it justice. "Anna." Matthew's voice came from behind her, closer now. She couldn't answer. Her throat had sealed itself shut. Her lungs had forgotten how to draw breath. The paper crinkled as her grip tightened. "Let me see that." She handed it over without looking at him. Her hand trembled so bad she could see it shaking, could watch it tremble like it belonged to some stranger. Matthew broke the seal. The paper unfolded with a crisp, expensive sound. Silence stretched out long and thin. Then a sharp intake of breath. "They're saying you owe them money. Your husband's debts." His voice went flat as a stone, hard as iron. "They claim they tracked you clear across 3 territories. They want payment, or—" He stopped cold. Anna forced herself to turn around, to look at his face. It had gone the color of old bone left out in the weather. "Or what?" she whispered. Matthew's jaw worked. His eyes moved across the letter again, like maybe reading it twice would change what the words said. "They'll have you arrested for theft. They're claiming you stole property when you left their house." The world tilted sideways. Anna grabbed for the porch railing. The wood bit into her palms, rough and real, splinters pressing sharp against her skin. It was the only solid thing left in a world that had started to spin. "I didn't steal anything?" The words came out thin as smoke. "I took my clothes, my mother's Bible. Nothing more. I believe you." Do you truly?" Matthew looked up from the letter. His dark eyes met hers. Yes. The word was simple, certain. It should have helped some. It didn't. Anna's knees buckled beneath her. She sat down hard on the porch step, skirts pooling around her in the dust like a flower wilting. Her hands pressed flat against the weathered wood, feeling the grain beneath her fingertips, trying to anchor herself to something that wouldn't slip away. "How did they find me?" Her voice sounded strange in her own ears, hollow, empty. "I was so careful. Changed my route 3 different times. Never used my married name until—" She stopped. Until she married Matthew. Until she stood in front of that justice of the peace in Ridgewater and signed her name in the ledger for anyone with eyes to see. The general store. Matthew's voice was quiet now. "Hendricks sends supply lists to merchants in Copper Creek and towns beyond. Your name would have been on the orders we placed." Of course it would. Anna pressed her hands harder against the rough wood. A splinter drove deep into her palm. She didn't pull away. The pain felt right somehow. Felt earned. I should leave. The words came out before she could stop them. Matthew went still as a statue. What did you say? If I stay here, they'll come. They'll make trouble for you, for the boys. No. You don't understand what these people are capable of. They have money. They have lawyers. They'll drag you into court and ruin your name in this territory, and I said no. Matthew's hand came down on her shoulder. Heavy. Solid. She could feel the calluses through the thin fabric of her Sunday dress. You're my wife, he said. That means something where I come from. Anna looked up at him. The sun was behind his head, turning his face into shadow. But she could make out his jaw, set hard as granite, stubborn as a mule. You married me for convenience, she said. You don't owe me anything beyond what we agreed. I owe you what any man owes the woman who carries his name. Protection. A home. A name that means something in this world. His grip on her shoulder tightened. Those men want to drag you through the mud. They'll have to come through me to do it. Footsteps sounded behind them. Anna turned her head. Eli stood in the doorway, his face pale as milk. Samuel hovered behind him, one hand gripping the back of his brother's shirt. Tight. Who's coming? Eli's voice cracked. Who wants to take her away? Matthew straightened up. His hand left Anna's shoulder. Nobody's taking anybody anywhere. Get yourselves inside now. Both of you. But Now, Eli. The boy didn't move an inch. His eyes stayed locked on Anna's face, searching hard for something truth, maybe, or comfort, or just the answer to fears he couldn't put words to. Samuel pushed past his brother. He crossed the porch in 3 quick steps and dropped to his knees right there in the dirt beside Anna. His small arms wrapped around her waist, his face pressing hard into her shoulder. Don't go, he whispered against her dress. Please don't go away. Anna's chest cracked wide open. She wrapped her arms around the boy and pulled him close, feeling his heart hammer against her ribs like a bird trying to get free. He smelled of dust and sunshine, and the particular sweetness that children carry with them, a scent she had thought she would never hold close again. I'm not going anywhere, she said. The lie tasted like ashes on her tongue, because she knew, even as the words left her mouth, that she would have to go. Tonight, while they slept, she would take her carpet bag and walk back to Ridgewater and catch the first stage heading anywhere else. She would disappear again, the same way she'd disappeared before, because that's what you did when the people chasing you had more money and more power than you could ever hope to fight. You ran. You always ran. Samuel's arms tightened around her waist. Promise me, he said. Promise you won't leave us. Anna closed her eyes. The splinter in her palm throbbed like a second heartbeat. Her chest ached with every breath. The evening air pressed thick against her skin, heavy with the smell of coming rain. I promise, she said. The word fell from her lips like a stone dropping into still water. She felt it ripple outward through Samuel's trembling body, through the wooden porch beneath her, through the silence that had swallowed Matthew and Eli whole. A promise she knew she couldn't keep, a lie she would never forgive herself for telling. But the boy in her arms needed to hear it. And so she said it. And so it was done. Matthew's boots appeared at the edge of her vision. Inside, he said. His voice was gentler now, tired. All of you. I need time to think. Samuel pulled back slow. His face was wet with tears. He hadn't known he was crying. Anna wiped them away with her thumb. "Go on now," she said. "Help your brother get supper started. I'll be in directly." The boy nodded. He got to his feet, wiped his nose on his sleeve, and walked inside with his head hanging low. Eli followed without a word. But at the door, he stopped and turned back to look at her. Their eyes met and held. Something passed between them, an understanding. Maybe, or the start of one. Then the boy was gone, swallowed up by the shadows inside the house. Anna stayed where she was on the porch step. Her legs wouldn't hold her yet. Her hands wouldn't stop their trembling. Matthew lowered himself down beside her. The wood creaked under his weight. His shoulder brushed against hers. Warm. Solid. There. "Don't run," he said quietly. "Whatever you're thinking about doing, don't." "How do you know what I'm thinking?" "Because it's what I would think if I was in your shoes." He turned his head and looked at her profile. "And it's the wrong answer." Anna stared out at the horizon. The sun was dropping fast now, painting the sky in shades of fire and blood. "They have lawyers," she said. "Money? Connections in high places. What do we have to fight them with? The truth." "The truth doesn't win against money. Not in my experience." "Sometimes it does." She laughed. The sound came out bitter and broken, like glass shattering. "You don't know these people. You don't know what they're willing to do." "Then tell me." She opened her mouth to speak, closed it again. The memories came flooding back like dirty water, the reading of the will in that cold parlor. The faces of Henry's family, as the lawyer explained that everything belonged to them. The house, the land, the money Henry had promised would be hers when he passed. All of it gone. Because her husband had never bothered to put her name on a single document that mattered. And then came the accusations. Thief, opportunist, fortune hunter. The words had chased her out of that courtroom and down the street and onto the first stagecoach heading west. They had followed her across 3 territories and 1,000 miles of empty road. Now they had caught up with her again. "My husband wasn't a good man," she said at last. "I didn't know that when I married him. By the time I figured it out, it was too late to matter." Matthew didn't speak, just waited. He had debts, gambling debts, mostly, debts to men who don't take kindly to not getting paid. When he died, his family told those creditors I was the one responsible, that I had driven him to his ruin, that I had stolen what little was left and run off like a thief in the night. "Had you?" "No." The word came out fierce as fire. "I took nothing that wasn't mine by rights. But it didn't matter none. His family needed somebody to blame, and I was right there waiting." The silence stretched long between them. The sky grew darker by degrees. A coyote howled somewhere off in the hills, thin and lonesome. "There's to be a hearing," Matthew said slowly. "Day after tomorrow. Says so in the letter. They've sent men to make their case before the circuit judge." Anna's stomach dropped through the floor. "I didn't see that part. It was on the second page." She turned to look at him. His face was half in shadow now, the dying light catching only the edge of his jaw, the hard line of his cheekbone. "What are you fixing to do?" she asked. Matthew pushed himself to his feet. His knees cracked loud in the quiet. He reached down and offered her his hand. He said. "What are we fixing to do?" Anna stared at his open palm, rough, calloused, waiting. "I don't understand you," she said. "Makes two of us, I reckon." She took his hand. He pulled her up easy. They stood face to face in the gathering dark, close enough that she could see the gray threading through his hair, the old scar above his eyebrow, the way his eyes caught the last of the light and held on to it. "Day after tomorrow," he said. "We face them together. You tell your truth. I stand beside you, and we see what the good Lord sees fit to send our way. And if they win," Matthew's jaw tightened, "they won't. But if they do, they won't." The words came out hard and final, like a door slamming shut on doubt. Anna wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust in the strength of his hands and the certainty in his voice and the impossible promise of this man who barely knew her standing between her and the wolves at her door. But she had believed before, and she had paid dearly for it. The screen door creaked open behind them. Samuel's voice drifted out small and hopeful. "Supper's ready." Matthew stepped back from her. His hand released hers. "Coming," he called. He walked toward the house without looking back. Anna stayed right where she was. The stars were coming out now, sharp and cold against the darkening sky. The first evening breeze lifted the hair from her neck, carrying the smell of sage and dust and summo, and something else rain coming, maybe, still miles away but moving steadily closer. She looked down at the porch step where she'd been sitting. The letter lay there, half crumpled, its red seal broken, its words poisoning the weathered wood. She picked it up, folded it careful, slipped it into her pocket. Then she walked inside to eat supper with a family that wasn't truly hers, in a house that might not be hers come 2 days' time, carrying a secret that was already making plans to run. The sheriff's office smelled of tobacco spit and old paper, and the sour tang of men who'd been arguing too long in a space too small for their anger. Anna stood just inside the doorway, hands clasped tight in front of her, spine straight as she could hold it. Matthew stood beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat coming off his body, the coiled tension in every muscle. Across the room, 2 men sat in wooden chairs that creaked beneath their city suits. The first was thin and gray as winter fog, with spectacles that caught the light and hid whatever was going on behind his eyes. The second was younger, broader, with a face like raw beef and hands that kept flexing against his thighs like he was itching to grab hold of something. The thin one spoke first. "Mrs. Reed, thank you for making time to see us." "Cole," Anna said. Her voice came out steadier than she'd expected. "My name is Cole now." The man's lips twitched at the corners. Not quite a smile. "Of course. My sincere apologies." He reached into his coat and drew out a sheaf of papers, setting them down on the sheriff's desk with careful deliberation. "I am Mr. Whitmore, representing the Reed family estate. This is my associate, Mr. Garrett. We've come to discuss the matter of your late husband's outstanding financial obligations." Anna's throat went tight. She made herself breathe. "I don't have any obligations to the Reed family. The law says otherwise, I'm afraid." Whitmore tapped the papers with one bony finger. "Your husband owed considerable sums at the time of his passing. As his widow, those debts transfer to you under the statutes of the territory where you resided. That's not how it works. I assure you it is. We have documentation." "Then your documentation is wrong." The words came out sharper than she'd meant them to. She felt Matthew shift beside her, his hand moving toward her elbow, then pulling back. Whitmore's spectacles flashed as he tilted his head to one side. "Mrs. Cole, I understand this is difficult for you, but the facts are quite clear. Henry Reed died owing $3,000 to various creditors. His family has generously agreed to settle those debts on your behalf in exchange for certain considerations. What considerations might those be? Return of the property you took when you fled, and a signed statement acknowledging your responsibility for the outstanding amounts." Anna's fingernails bit into her palms. She could feel the half-moon marks they were leaving in her flesh. "I didn't take anything that wasn't mine. We have witnesses who say different." "Then your witnesses are lying through their teeth." Garrett shifted in his chair, his meaty hands flexed again, knuckles cracking loud in the quiet room. "Careful now," he said. His voice came out low and flat as a snake's belly. "Calling a man a liar in this part of the country can have consequences." Matthew stepped forward. "So can threatening a man's wife." The room went still as a held breath. Sheriff Burke sat behind his desk, his weathered face giving away nothing, his eyes moving back and forth between the two groups like a man watching storm clouds build on the horizon. "Gentlemen," he said slowly, "let's keep this civilized." Whitmore raised one hand in a calming gesture that somehow managed to look like he was patting a dog. "Of course, Sheriff, we're not here to make threats. We're here to seek justice." He turned his attention back to Anna. "Mrs. Cole, let me be frank with you. The Reed family has no desire to see you locked away in a prison cell. They simply want what is rightfully owed to them. Sign the papers, return what you took, and this whole unpleasant business can be resolved quietly." Anna's stomach churned like she'd swallowed something rotten. She could feel the walls pressing in closer. The room was too small, the air too thick, the eyes on her too many and too sharp. But underneath the fear, something else was stirring. Anger. The same anger that had carried her out of that courtroom 3 years back. The same anger that had kept her feet moving when her boots wore through and her body begged her to stop. The same anger that had refused to let her curl up and die on the side of some nameless road in some godforsaken territory. "I didn't take anything," she said again. Her voice was steadier now, colder. "When Henry died, I had nothing. No money, no property, no claim to anything he'd ever owned. His family saw to that. That's not what our records indicate." "Then your records are wrong." She took a step forward, closing the distance between them. "I know exactly what you're trying to do here. You want to pin Henry's failures on me, his gambling, his drinking, his debts, but I won't carry that weight anymore. I spent 7 years bent under it, and I'm done." Whitmore's practiced smile slipped sideways. "Mrs. Cole, you want to take me to court? Then take me. But I'll tell the judge exactly what happened. How your clients threw a widow out into the street with nothing but the clothes on her back. How they spread lies about me to cover up their own shame. How they've hounded me across half the country because they can't stand the thought of somebody escaping their grip." Her voice rose higher. She couldn't seem to stop it. "I've got nothing left to lose. But they do. They've got their precious reputation, their standing in society, their good family name, and I will drag every last bit of it out into the light if they force my hand." Silence crashed down like a hammer. Whitmore's face had gone the color of sour milk. Garrett's hands had finally stopped their flexing. Anna stood in the middle of that cramped room, chest heaving, heart slamming against her ribs like it wanted out. She'd said too much, she knew that. But the words had been building up for 3 long years. And now they were out, and she couldn't take them back. Wouldn't take them back. Sheriff Burke cleared his throat. Mr. Whitmore, you got any actual evidence of theft? The thin man hesitated. His hand moved toward the papers on the desk, then stopped halfway. We have statements. From who? Family members, household staff who were employed at the time. Anybody who doesn't work for the Reed family or owe them money? Silence. I see. Burke leaned back in his chair, the wood groaning under his weight. And you, Mrs. Cole, you have papers showing your marriage is legal, your current status. Anna reached into her pocket. Her fingers found the folded document, the marriage certificate she'd been carrying since the day she and Matthew stood before the Justice of the Peace in Ridgewater. She handed it across to the sheriff. Burke unfolded it slow. Read through it careful. Nodded once. This here is all in order. He looked up at Whitmore. The lady is legally wed. Any debts she might have carried, if such debts even exist, would be the responsibility of her current husband now, not hers alone. Garrett's face went red as a brick. That's the law as I understand it. Burke's voice hardened up like cooling iron. I don't know how things work back east where you come from, but out here in this territory, a woman's past doesn't chase her into a new marriage. If Mr. Cole here wants to take on his wife's obligations, that's his business to decide. If he doesn't, you've got no claim worth pursuing. He tossed the certificate back to Anna. My advice to you gentlemen, head on home. Tell your clients they've thrown good money after bad. Whitmore rose slowly from his chair. His movements were stiff and tight, the movements of a man swallowing back rage. This matter isn't concluded. It is in my jurisdiction. Burke jerked his chin toward the door. Safe travels now. For a long, stretched-out moment, nobody moved. Then Garrett heaved himself up from his seat. His chair scraped hard against the floor, loud as a gunshot in the quiet. He walked past Anna without so much as a glance in her direction. But as he drew even with Matthew, he stopped short. Your wife's got quite a mouth on her, he said, low and mean. Hope it doesn't land her in trouble she can't talk her way out of. Matthew's hand shot forward. Anna grabbed his arm. Her fingers dug deep into his sleeve, holding him back with everything she had. Don't, she breathed. He's not worth it. Matthew's arm was rigid as iron beneath her grip. His jaw was clenched so tight she could see the veins standing out thick in his neck. But he held himself still. Garrett smiled. A small, satisfied curve, the lips. Then he walked on out the door. Whitmore followed close behind, pausing at the threshold to look back over his shoulder at Anna. The Reed family has a long memory, Mrs. Cole, and very deep pockets. This isn't finished. He was gone before she could think of a reply. The door swung shut behind him. Anna's legs gave out beneath her. She dropped into the nearest chair, hands shaking, breath coming in short, ragged gasps that she couldn't seem to control. The room spun lazy around her, the sheriff's desk, the wanted posters tacked to the wall, the dust motes floating in the shaft of light from the window. Matthew crouched down beside her. Anna. She couldn't make words come. Her throat had sealed itself shut again, but this time it wasn't fear doing it. It was something else, something she didn't rightly have a name for yet. You did good in there, Matthew said quietly. You stood your ground. You spoke your truth. I said too much. You said what needed saying. His hand found hers where it lay trembling in her lap. Rough, warm, steady as bedrock. It's over now, he said. Anna looked up at him. At his face, lined and weathered and worried in a way that made something ache deep in her chest. No, she said. It's not, because she knew men like Whitmore, men like Garrett. They didn't give up easy. They didn't forgive slights. They waited and watched and found another way to hurt you when your guard was down. But for now, for this one moment, they were gone. That would have to be enough. The sheriff pushed up from his desk. You folks should head on home. Get some rest. He moved toward the door, then stopped and turned back. Mrs. Cole. Anna lifted her head to look at him. Burke's face was still unreadable, but something in his eyes had gone soft around the edges. Your husband there is a lucky man. He walked out before she could find words to respond. Matthew helped her to her feet. Her legs were still shaky underneath her, but they held. They walked together to the door, outside. The sunlight hit her like a wall after the dimness of the office. Anna squinted hard against it, one hand rising to shade her eyes, and stopped dead in her tracks. Two small figures stood waiting by the wagon, red hair catching the light. Wheat-colored hair ruffling in the breeze. Eli and Samuel, right there in the dust, faces turned toward the sheriff's office like flowers straining toward the sun. They had come on their own. Nobody had told them to. Nobody had brought them. They had found their way here, somehow walked or rode or hitched a ride. Anna couldn't imagine which, because they needed to know what was happening, because they needed to be here. Samuel spotted her first. His face broke wide open into a grin so big it seemed to swallow up his whole head. He ran. Anna barely had time to brace herself before he slammed into her, arms wrapping tight around her waist, face pressing hard against her stomach. You stayed, he said, the words muffled against her dress. You didn't leave us. Anna's hand found its way to his hair. Soft, warm, real. I stayed. Eli hung back by the wagon, watching with his arms crossed over his chest, face arranged in its usual careful blankness. But he was here. That counted for something. Matthew walked over to his older son. Anna couldn't hear what passed between them. Their voices were too low, but she saw Eli's shoulders ease down some, saw his arms drop to his sides, saw him nod once, sharp and quick, at something his father said. Then Matthew put his hand on the boy's shoulder. Eli didn't pull away from it. Samuel tilted his head back to look up at Anna. Are the bad men gone now? Anna dropped to her knees so she was level with his eyes. The dirt pressed cold through her skirt. Her hands found his face and cupped it gentle. They're gone. Gone for good. She paused. The truth was tangled up and complicated. The truth was that men like Whitmore didn't quit easy. The truth was that the Reed family had money and lawyers and a grudge that wouldn't die. But the truth was also this: she had stood in that room and said her piece. And she hadn't run. And she wasn't planning to run now. For now, she said. And that's enough. Samuel's forehead wrinkled up as he puzzled over her words. He didn't need to understand them. Anna pulled him close and held on tight, breathing in the smell of dust and sunshine and the sweet, particular scent of a boy who had chosen to love her, despite every reason not to. Over his shoulder, she saw Eli watching them. Their eyes met across the distance. The wall was still there behind his face, but now she could see the cracks running through it. She gave him a small nod. He nodded back. Matthew appeared at her side, hand extended down toward her. Let's go home. Anna took his hand and let him pull her up to standing. The four of them climbed into the wagon together, Matthew and Anna up on the bench, the boys settling into the back, and started the long ride home. The sun was warm on Anna's face. The wind carried the smell of sage and wildflowers blooming somewhere out of sight. Behind her, she could hear Samuel telling Eli about something he'd spotted in town, his voice bright and excited, words tumbling over each other in their hurry to get out. And beside her, Matthew's shoulder pressed steady against hers, solid and warm, a presence she was starting to count on. She turned her head to look at him. He was staring straight ahead at the road, hands easy on the reins, face thoughtful and still. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. Matthew didn't answer right away. The wagon crested the last hill. Below them, the ranch spread out peaceful in the valley white house. Weathered barn, horses grazing lazy in the afternoon light. Home. The word didn't feel strange in her mind anymore. "I'm thinking," Matthew said slow, "that I married you because it was practical." Anna's chest went tight. "I know that. And I'm thinking that was a fool's reason." The words hit her like a slap. Anna turned her face away. The landscape blurred as her eyes filled up with tears she was determined not to let fall. "I understand," she said, keeping her voice level. "I'll get my things together when we—" "That's not what I meant." Matthew's hand closed over hers on the bench between them. She looked down at their fingers twined together, then up at his face. He was watching her now. Really watching. His eyes were dark and serious, and full of something she'd never seen there before. "I mean, I should have married you for real reasons," he said. "Not just practical ones." Anna's breath stopped in her throat. "What?" "I didn't know who you were back then. I know now." His grip on her hand tightened. "I know you're stubborn as a mule and proud as a peacock, and you don't have the sense to quit when you ought to. I know you make biscuits that could bring a grown man to tears. I know my boys look at you like you hung the moon and stars." His voice dropped low. "I know I've started looking at you the same way." The wagon wheels creaked beneath them. The horses plodded on steady. Behind them, the boys had gone quiet, watching, understanding that something important was happening. Anna couldn't speak. She could only stare at this man, this stubborn, wounded, complicated man, and wonder how in the world she'd ended up here, in this place, at this moment, with his hand holding hers and his eyes on her face, and his heart laid bare in the afternoon light. "I'm no good at saying things," Matthew went on, but his voice had gone rough and uncertain, like he was walking on ground he didn't trust. "I wasn't any good at it with Sarah, and I'm worse at it now. But I'm asking you." He stopped, drew a breath, started again. "I'm asking you to stay, not because some piece of paper says you belong to me, but because you want to. Because this is where you choose to be." The wind picked up and lifted the hair from Anna's neck. It carried the smell of sage and dust and something sweeter underneath wildflowers, blooming in the valley below. She looked at Matthew, at his weathered face, worried and hopeful all at once, at his hand, rough and calloused, holding hers like she might vanish if he let go, at the life he was offering her, not perfect, not easy, but real. "Yes," she said, simple, quiet, final. Matthew's whole face changed. The tension drained out of it like water running downhill, replaced by something softer, something that looked an awful lot like joy. Behind them, Samuel let out a whoop loud enough to spook the horses. "She said yes. Did you hear that, Eli? She said yes." Eli's voice came back gruff and embarrassed. "I heard. Reckon the whole territory heard." Anna laughed. The sound surprised her, bubbling up from somewhere deep inside. And once it started, she couldn't make it stop. Matthew smiled at her. It was the first real smile she'd ever seen cross his face. It changed everything about him, smoothed the hard lines, softened the sharp edges, made him look younger and lighter and almost happy. "Well then," he said, "let's get on home." He clucked his tongue at the horses. The wagon rolled on down the hill toward the valley, toward the White House and the weathered barn, and whatever was waiting for them there. Anna leaned her head against Matthew's shoulder. His arm came around her, warm and solid and sure. And for the first time in 3 long years, she let herself believe that she had finally, truly, stopped running. The kitchen was full of noise for the first time in years. Anna stood at the stove, turning bacon in the cast iron skillet. Listening to the commotion behind her, Samuel was arguing with Eli about whose turn it was to feed the horses. Eli was insisting Samuel had done it yesterday. Samuel was claiming he'd done it every single day since the beginning of time, and it wasn't fair. "Both of you," Anna said without turning around. "Eat your breakfast first. Argue after." But he eat. The scrape of chairs against the floor, the clatter of forks on tin plates, the blessed quiet of mouths too full to complain. Anna let herself smile. The morning light poured through the window she'd cleaned 3 weeks back, the glass so clear now it seemed to disappear entirely. Sunbeams caught the dust motes floating lazy through the air, turning them to gold. The smell of coffee and bacon and fresh bread filled every corner of the room. The screen door creaked open behind her. Matthew's boots crossed the kitchen floor, familiar now as her own heartbeat. She felt him stop beside her, close enough that his shoulder brushed her arm. "Smells mighty good in here. It's just bacon." "I know it is." He reached past her to pour himself a cup of coffee from the pot on the back of the stove. His hand grazed her wrist as he drew back, warm and rough. Anna looked up at him. He'd shaved again this morning, same as he'd been doing every day for the past week. The skin along his jaw was smooth, still damp from the basin. His eyes met hers, dark and steady, holding something that made her breath catch. "Morning," he said softly. "Morning." They stood there for a moment, the bacon sizzling between them, the boys' voices rising and falling in the background like music. Then Matthew turned and walked to the table. Anna watched him go. His shoulders sat different than they had a month ago. Looser. His stride was easier too, not carrying so much weight. Even his voice had changed, still quiet, still careful. But the sharp edge was gone from it. He settled into his chair at the head of the table. Samuel launched straight into a story about a dream he'd had, something about a horse that could run faster than the wind. Eli rolled his eyes but didn't interrupt. Anna brought the bacon to the table on a cracked blue platter. She sat down in her place, the chair that had stood empty for 2 years before she came and reached for the coffee pot. Matthew's hand found hers under the table. A quick squeeze. There and gone. She poured the coffee without spilling a drop. "Can I have more eggs?" Samuel asked through a mouthful of bread. "Finish what's on your plate first." "But I'm still hungry." "Then you'll be hungry until you finish." The boy sighed like the world was ending, but went back to his breakfast. Eli stayed quiet. But Anna caught him watching her, his eyes thoughtful, his face unreadable. She raised an eyebrow at him. He looked away quick, but not before she saw his mouth twitch at the corner. The meal went on. Forks scraped against plates. Coffee cups clinked soft against saucers. Outside, A rooster crowed and a horse nickered and the wind moved through the tall grass with a sound like water running over stones. Ordinary sounds. Ordinary morning. Ordinary life. Anna had forgotten what ordinary felt like. "I need help mending the fence up in the north pasture," Matthew said. "Eli, you're with me today. Samuel, you stay here and help Anna in the garden." Samuel's face lit up bright as sunrise. "Can we plant more tomatoes?" "If Anna says so." The boy swung around to look at her, eyes huge, expression pleading fit to melt stone. "Please, I like tomatoes, something fierce." "We'll see what the soil can handle." "That means yes." Samuel grinned wide at his brother. "She always says we'll see when she means yes." Eli snorted. "You're such a baby. Am not. Are two boys." Matthew's voice cut through easy. "That's enough now." Quiet settled over the table. But it wasn't the heavy silence Anna remembered from her first days here, the silence of grief and fear and walls too thick to climb. This was different, lighter, almost comfortable. The boys cleared their plates and carried them to the basin without being asked. Anna watched them go, her throat tight. "You've done something to them," Matthew said quietly. She turned to look at him. "What do you mean, before you came? They couldn't stay in the same room 5 minutes without going at each other. Now they still fight, but it's different." "How so?" "Fighting because you're mad at the world is one thing. Fighting because you're not scared anymore is something else entirely." Matthew's eyes were serious on her face. "They're not scared anymore." Anna didn't know what to say to that. She looked down at her hands resting on the table. The wedding ring on her finger caught the light the simple band Matthew had given her the day after the hearing, when they'd stood before the justice of the peace and said their vows again, this time meaning every word. She still wore Henry's ring too, but different now. It hung on a thin chain around her neck, tucked safe beneath her dress, a reminder of who she'd been and how far she'd traveled to become somebody new. Someday she'd take it off for good, but not yet. Not until she was ready to let go of everything it stood for: the pain, the shame, the years of running. Until then, it would stay where it was, close to her heart, but no longer on her hand. Matthew pushed back his chair. "Best get moving. That fence won't fix itself." He crossed to the door, then stopped with his hand on the frame. "Anna." She looked up. He stood there in the doorway, hat in his hands, his shape dark against the bright morning light spilling in from outside. "Thank you," he said. Simple words. Quiet words. Heavy with everything he couldn't say. For what? For staying. He put his hat on and walked out into the day. Anna sat alone at the table, the dishes still warm, the coffee going cold in her cup. Through the window. She watched him cross the yard toward the barn. Eli appeared around the corner of the house and fell into step beside his father. The two of them walked together, their strides matching now, their shadows stretching long across the packed dirt. Samuel burst through the back door like a storm coming. "Anna, can we start now? Can we? I found the seeds you was saving in the pantry." She turned to look at him. His face was flushed pink with excitement. Dirt already smudged his cheek from heaven knew where. His shirt was half untucked and his hair stuck up in every direction like he'd been wrestling with the wind. He looked like a boy should look. He looked happy. "Let me get my gloves," Anna said. She pushed back from the table and crossed to the hook by the door where she kept her gardening things. The gloves were worn soft now, the leather stained dark with the good, clean dirt of this place she was learning to call home. She pulled them on. Samuel grabbed her hand and tugged her toward the door. Come on, Come on. Anna let herself be pulled. The garden was out back of the house, a small patch she'd carved out of the hard-packed earth a few weeks past. The soil was better now she'd worked compost into it, hauled water from the well bucket by bucket, nursed the first green shoots through chilly nights with old blankets draped over stakes. Tomatoes, beans, squash. The start of something that would see them through the winter. The start of a home. Samuel dropped to his knees in the dirt and commenced digging with his bare hands. We need holes for the seeds. Right, I remember. You showed me. That's right, but use the trowel. It's easier on your fingers. Hands are more fun. Anna knelt down beside him. The earth was cool beneath her knees. The sun was warm on her back. The smell of turned soil rose up around her, rich and dark and full of promise. She watched Samuel dig, his small fingers pushing into the dirt, his face screwed up tight with concentration. Anna. Yes. Last night before I went to sleep, I said a prayer for you to stay forever. Her hands went still on the trowel. Did you now? Uh-huh. And Eli did too. I heard him through the wall. He didn't know I was listening, but I was. Anna's eyes stung something fierce. She blinked hard and kept her attention fixed on the row of seeds in her hand. That was real kind of you both, she managed. Do you reckon it worked, the praying? She looked at him then, at his dirt-smudged face and his earnest eyes and his absolute certainty that the world made sense if you just believed hard enough in it. I reckon, she said carefully, that some prayers get answered in ways we don't expect. Samuel considered this, his forehead wrinkling up. Like getting a new mama, even though we didn't ask for one exactly. The word hit her square in the chest. Mama. He'd said it so easy, so natural. Like it was the most obvious thing in all the world. Anna's throat closed up tight. She opened her mouth to say something, but nothing would come out. Samuel didn't seem to notice. He'd already gone back to his digging, his mind jumping ahead to whatever came next the way children's minds always did. But the word hung there in the air between them, real as the dirt beneath their fingers, solid as the ground under their knees. Mama, not his mother, not the woman who'd sung while she hung the washing, who'd read to him every night before sleep, who'd died and left a hole in his heart nothing could fill. But something new, something different, something his. Anna swallowed down the lump in her throat and bent back to her work. The morning stretched on lazy and warm. The sun climbed higher in the sky, shadows shrank, and the air grew thick with heat, and the smell of growing things filled up the world. By midday, the seeds were planted. Samuel ran off to find his brother, his task complete, his energy already pointed toward whatever adventure waited next. Anna sat back on her heels and looked at what they'd made. It wasn't much to see. A few rows of turned earth, a handful of seeds buried beneath the surface. The promise of something that might grow. If the rain came and the sun stayed and nothing went too wrong. But it was hers. She had made it. She stood up slow, brushing dirt from her skirts, and walked back toward the house. The afternoon passed in the steady rhythm of chores, dishes washed, clothes mended, bread dough set to rise for tomorrow. The house filled with the sounds of living again, the creak of floorboards and the bang of the screen door and the distant shouts of boys at play somewhere out by the barn. Evening crept in slow, the way it did in summer, the sky holding onto its light until the very last moment. Anna was setting the table for supper when Matthew came through the door. He smelled of honest sweat and sawdust and the open air. His shirt was dark with hard work, his face weathered red by the wind. He stopped in the doorway and just looked at her. "What is it?" she asked. "Nothing." But he didn't look away. "Just nothing." She felt heat rise in her cheeks and turned back to the plates. The boys came in hungry as wolves. They ate like they hadn't seen food in a week. Forks moving faster than mouths could keep up. Conversation a jumbled mess of horses and fences and the snake Eli had found down by the creek. It was this long? Samuel held his hands wide apart. Maybe longer. It was half that size. Eli rolled his eyes. "You always make things bigger than they are? Do not. Do too. Do not?" "Enough." Anna's voice cut through gentle. "Finish your supper." The boys settled down into grumbling quiet. Matthew caught her eye across the table. He smiled. It was small, that smile. Barely there. But it reached all the way to his eyes, and she'd learned to read what that meant. After supper, the boys went upstairs to ready themselves for bed. Anna followed behind them. Samuel's room was tiny, not much bigger than a closet, but he'd made it his own. Drawings covered the walls, horses, mostly, and the house, and a figure that might have been Anna if you squinted just right. He was already under the covers when she came in, eyes heavy, breath slowing down. "Story," he murmured. "Not tonight. It's too late." "Please." She sat down on the edge of his bed. The mattress dipped beneath her. The old springs creaked soft. "One story," she said. "A short one." She told him about a boy who planted a seed and watched it grow into a tree so tall it touched the clouds. By the time she got to the end, his eyes had closed and his breath came even and slow. She bent down and pressed a kiss to his forehead. "Good night now," she whispered. "Good night, Mama." The word came out slurred with sleep. Half conscious, barely there. But it was there. Real. Hers. Anna stood and walked to the door. She paused at the threshold and looked back. Moonlight fell soft across Samuel's face, pale and silver, turning him into something from a dream. She closed the door quiet behind her and went downstairs. Matthew was out on the porch. She found him sitting in one of the rocking chairs. Legs stretched out long, eyes fixed on the stars, scattered thick across the sky. She settled into the chair beside his. The night was warm. Crickets sang somewhere in the grass. The smell of sage drifted up from the valley below. They sat in silence for a good long while. Then Matthew spoke. "She used to sit out here, Sarah, after the boys went to bed. Said it was the only quiet she got all day long." Anna didn't answer, just waited. "I couldn't come out here after she passed. Couldn't stand to look at this chair sitting empty. I moved it into the barn for a spell. But that felt wrong too." His voice was rough, halting, the voice of a man saying things he'd never spoken aloud. "I brought it back out last week. Didn't even think about why until I saw you sitting in it." He turned his head to look at her. Felt right somehow. Seeing you there. Anna's heart squeezed tight. "Matthew, I know it's a strange thing, talking about her with you, but I need you to understand. She was good. She was kind and patient, and she loved those boys more than life itself. And I loved her something fierce. I know you did. But she's gone now." His voice cracked clean in two. "And you're here. And I don't rightly know how to hold both those things at once. Don't know how to let go of her and hold on to you at the same time. Anna reached out through the dark. Her hand found his on the arm of the chair. You don't have to let go, she said softly. She's part of this family still, part of those boys, part of you. That doesn't change just because I'm here now. Matthew's fingers tightened around hers. I was so scared, he said, after she died. Scared of feeling anything at all. Reckoned if I let myself care about somebody again, I'd just end up losing them too. And now? He was quiet for a long moment. The stars wheeled slow overhead. The rocking chair creaked gentle beneath him. Now I'm more scared of never trying. Anna leaned her head against his shoulder. His arm came around her, warm and solid and certain. I told you I wasn't offering love, he said. That first day, said I didn't have any left to give. I remember. I was wrong about that. His voice dropped to a whisper. I didn't know it then. But I was dead wrong. Anna closed her eyes. The night wrapped soft around them, dark and warm and full of possibility. Stay with me, Matthew said. I'm not going anywhere. I mean always. Stay with me always. She turned her face into his shoulder. Always, she said. The word came out quiet, simple, true. They sat together on the porch, watching the stars, listening to the crickets, feeling the warmth of each other close beside them. Inside the house, the boys slept peaceful. Inside the barn, the horses shifted and sighed in their stalls. Inside Anna's chest, something that had been broken for a very long time finally began to knit itself back together, slow and steady, stitch by patient stitch. And so the story finds its resting place. Perhaps you felt something familiar in these pages, that quiet weight of starting over when you thought you were done starting over. The tender ache of watching children learn to trust again. The way hope can feel almost dangerous when you've been disappointed too many times before. Many of us know what it's like to arrive somewhere new with nothing but what we could carry. Some of us have loved people who weren't easy to love, and been loved by people we didn't expect. Some of us have sat on porches in the evening, watching the stars come out, wondering if we'd finally found the place where we belonged. These feelings don't need explaining. They're allowed to sit with you a while, unfinished and familiar, like an old song you remember but can't quite name. It's all right if something stirred in you that hasn't settled yet. Not everything needs to be resolved tonight. Thank you for staying until the end. It has been a privilege to spend this time with you.